As Celtic stuttered to another trophyless season in February 1991, the future was bleak for this once giant of Scottish football. The trophy cabinet was empty, the stadium was a relic, and time was running out for the hapless Celtic board, who had no means to finance an all-seated stadium by 1994. The Taylor Report and recent UEFA directives made this a priority, but Celtic's bean counters were out of touch and the club's supporters were growing restless. The fanzine movement, spearheaded by Not The View, gave fans a new platform in which they could express their frustrations. A group was formed by 5 such beleaguered supporters: Willie Wilson, Jim Orr, Dave Ashman, Duncan Hart and Brian Mullen, in an effort to save Our Celts. Save Our Celts wanted the club to go public, to change their attitude towards the fans. They wanted a new stadium, and they wanted to get the recently ousted Brian Dempsey back on the board. A flyer drop was organised, a venue was booked, and 350 frustrated fans turned up at Shettleston Town Hall on Monday the 25th of February 1991 in an effort to start a movement to force change. A Celtic State of Mind has unearthed 3 hours of unseen archive footage from those dark, dark days, and we'll share it all with Celtic fans on our channel. This series has been introduced by Jim Orr in part 1. The next episode takes us back to a meeting chaired by legendary Glasgow lawyer Joe Beltrami. Celtic fans wanted change, and Save Our Celts started to kick up a storm that would soon engulf the Celtic boardroom.
Mr. Beltrami, if I can ask you first of all, what is the need for this meeting today?
You'll find out when you listen to the meeting. There's a great need for this meeting today, in my opinion. I was asked at the last minute to chair this meeting. I'm only too delighted to do that. There's a lot to be said and done. So just listen intently to us in there, please, and you'll find out the reason for this meeting.
Obviously, you're talking about problems in the boardroom at Celtic Park.
Many people are dissatisfied at the progress of Celtic in recent years. I'm only one of many. This is why we're having the meeting, to try to resolve matters.
Is it too early to say that this is the first step in a takeover bid for Celtic?
Nothing to do with takeover. Nothing to do with that. This is simply the first step, hopefully, in a new approach.
What sort of people have you invited here today?
With Brian Dempsey, ex-director, Jim Craig, Lisbon Lion, Jerry Dunbar, editor of Not The View, and 1 or 2 members of this Save Our Celts committee. About half a dozen.
Are you pleased that 2 Celtic directors, Mr. Farrell and Mr. Grant, are coming along?
I'm delighted that they're coming. I'd rather see the whole lot here. But they're coming along as it were, non-combatants. They won't be asked any questions today. There'll be a further time for this. Just wait and see.
What's the next step after today's meeting?
They're here today as listeners.
What's the next step after today's meeting?
Can't tell you that, I'm sorry. You'll find out.
Things are obviously happening.
Hopefully, yes.
Mr. Beltrami, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Willie, if I can just ask you first of all, what is the need for this meeting today?
Well, what we want to do is get a voice for the supporters, and we can see the way ahead being an independent Celtic Supporters Association that reflects all the views of Celtic fans, not just a select few.
Why are you dissatisfied with the current Celtic Supporters Association?
Well, we feel that George Delaney and that association is completely out of touch with the grassroots of support. You know, a lot of people do have genuine grievances against Celtic, and Mr. Delaney does nothing. He sits back and nods his head.
How significant is it that Mr. Brian Dempsey is here addressing you today?
Very significant. Mr. Dempsey knows what he's talking about. He's been in at Celtic. He knows the setup there. He's a very smart, articulate man. You know, he's a good man to have on your side.
Are you pleased that 2 of the Celtic board are actually coming here to listen?
Delighted. It shows that there is a willingness on the board that they are going to listen, but they must listen all the time, not just one day to show that they're, lip service or whatever. They've got to listen always.
Some people will read more into this, that this is the start of a possible takeover bid for Celtic. What do you say to that?
Well, it's not. It's a bid by fans to get a voice. That's the main thing, and for people to realise that there is problems at Celtic, but probably by coming together that we can help solve these problems.
Brian, first of all, what is the need for a meeting like this, Save Our Celts?
Well, there are obviously some supporters, Jim, who feel there's a need for it. I'm happy to attend. This is not the first Celtic supporters function I've attended. I receive a considerable number of invitations and I've yet to decline one. I'm happy to come along and listen to what they have to say, and happy to say my piece to them too, because Celtic supporters feel they're going through difficult times at the moment, and it's important for me that everyone pulls together rather than fragments into different types of groupings. So some of them feel the concern, and I hope that we can perhaps put some of that concern to rest today.
Couldn't this be seen as some form of fragmentation, the fact that we're trying to set up a separate Celtic Supporters Association?
Yes, there are always dangers in that. I know what I have to say to them in that count, and that will be to go that extra mile to try and work with the club and the present organisations to try and make it work. I'm not in favour of further fragmentation. The more one is divided, the more one is easily conquered, and that's not a good philosophy at any time.
We hear that Mr Grant and Mr Farrell are attending today. Does that please you?
I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted. Jimmy and Tom were great supporters within the board, as were Jack McGinn and Kevin Kelly, and I'm delighted that they'll be here with me today.
What's going to be the gist of your message, Mr Dempsey?
Well, for my part, I really want to say to them in honesty that these are very difficult times for a club such as Celtic, and it can never achieve the success that's needed both on and off the park unless everyone pulls together. And I really will be making that appeal, that we all pull together. See you later.
The scene was set, the tension mounting, but Celtic dismissed this coming together as something that would serve little purpose and simply cause embarrassment to the club. George Delaney, General Secretary of the Celtic Supporters Association, was invited along, but he failed to attend, branding the rally as a nonsense. Undeterred, the meeting went ahead, with Joe Beltrami flanked by Jim Craig, Willie Wilson, Not the View's Jerry Dunbar, Brian Dempsey, and board members Jimmy Farrell and Tom Grant. Celtic fans had been called malcontents by the club's Blazers. This label became a badge of honour as Save Our Celts finally rebelled to make a stand against the board.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, fans. Very warm welcome to this meeting, this inaugural meeting. How do you switch this on? Oh, yeah. To this inaugural meeting, organised and convened by a group of 5 young lads, and it's called the Save Our Celts Committee. I must make it clear that this young group hired this hall at their own expense. They're not asking for reimbursement. They hired this hall because they're loyal, staunch fans of Glasgow Celtic Football Club. And they, like many others of us, are dissatisfied at certain steps, at the way certain matters have been going. And this is why they decided to convene this meeting. I'm delighted at the numbers. This crowd would do credit to Firhill on a Saturday. And I must introduce the speakers we have at this table. We have, on my far right, Jim Craig, needs no introduction, famous Lisbon Lion. Willie is one of the committee members here. Mr. Dunbar, editor, Celtic directors. Mr. Farrell and Mr. Grant. I give them a very warm welcome to this meeting. As was said at the outset, I was asked to chair this meeting at the 11th hour. In fact, I think it was 28 minutes past 11. And the reason for this was that the previous chairman, at the last minute, declined to attend. Possibly he thought that his appearance here might incur the wrath of the Celtic board. But so far as I'm concerned, there's no such worry. I've incurred the wrath over the past 6 years, since I first started writing publicly 6 years ago, about certain aspects of the club. Now, I think we should start by giving possibly a declaration of intent, raison d'etre, reason why we're here, and why so many of you have turned out. And perhaps it could be this way, put this way. Declaration of intent must be, on our parts, to try as best we can, bearing in mind our limited resources so far as weaponry is concerned, gentlemen, but to try as best we can to arouse what I would consider to be the great sleeping giant, to rouse this giant from its deep, sound, and recent slumber, so that this giant can compete formidably on the field and in the marketplace, and so that the club can regain its rightful spot within the accepted and indeed expected traditions of Glasgow Celtic football. That, it seems to me, is our declaration of intent. Now, so far as my credentials are concerned for the chair, I think it was roughly 1942 that I attended my first professional football match. I'd heard about Celtic. I'd been fed on a diet of their success. A few years earlier, they had won the Exhibition Cup. And a friend of mine decided to take me to a football match. So I went along in the early 40s to Cathkin Park, full of expectation and hope. The match finished Thirlanark 4, Celtic 2. I was astonished. I came out of the ground with my friend, scratching my head. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Why?" He'd obviously seen them before. He said, "Why?" He wasn't so surprised, you see. I said, "Well, Celtic have lost 4-2. He said, "Well, so what?" I said, "But if Third Lanark can beat them 4-2, what would the second team do to them?" And that was my first introduction to professional matches. I've seen them many, many times since. I've been abroad with them all over Europe. I've been to Russia, Czechoslovakia, Lisbon, South America. I remember Lisbon, the night following the game, and at that time the Celtic board were still speaking to me. I remember being in the club hotel at about 2 in the morning, talking to Jock Steen, Neil Mochen, Sean Farron, in the vestibule. Taxi pulled up, man came out with a huge green box, massive green box tied with string, put it at our feet. We opened it, and there it was, the European Cup. That's my first touch of the European Cup. I hope that the directors who are good enough to attend today will go back to their board and tell them how well this meeting was conducted. It was not a rabble. There was no slanging, conducted with dignity. Because I have a hope, gentlemen, that in the not too distant future, we'll have another meeting, perhaps in a bigger place than this, in which the directors will attend, in which they will be asked proper, relevant questions by fans who, after all, are the lifeblood of this club. And I hope that each and every one of them will attend our next meeting in the knowledge that he'll be treated with the utmost courtesy, that the meeting would be to try to redress matters, try to ascertain the reason for what seems to be malaise in this famous club of ours.
Thank you. Let me first take this opportunity to thank you all for taking the time and effort to attend today. I hope that you will find it all very worthwhile. In a way, it's all rather sad that we find ourselves here today discussing the best ways forward for our club. 25 years ago, this would have been unimaginable. Sadly, today, it is very much a part of reality. We all know what has happened to our club over the past quarter of a century, and it would serve no useful purpose to go through all the reasons that have led to this downfall. All I will say is that 25 years ago, our club was the most feared and respected club in the world. Today, it is a shambles and an embarrassment to the most loyal, colourful and wonderful supporters in Britain. Over the years, we the fans, the true shareholders of Celtic, have never been consulted in any way on the running of our club. Instead, we have had to rely on the official Supporters Association led by Mr George Delaney to convey our views. Mr Delaney and his association are completely out of touch with the grassroots support. We do not intend to stoop to the level of trading insults with Mr Delaney. All we will say on the matter is that fans should pause for thought and ask themselves, do they seriously think that Mr Delaney has their best interests at heart? We feel that this attitude is no longer acceptable and the time for change is now upon us. But the change must be a democratic change, brought about by talking together and constructive actions, not by mob rule. It is to this end that we would like to see the setting up of an independent Celtic Supporters Association, an association that has one main aim, to give the supporters of Celtic a voice that will be listened to, a voice that will not be afraid to speak out, and most importantly, a voice that will speak for all Celtic fans, not just a select few. One thing is for sure though, the directors must realise that they have a responsibility to the fans. They must make themselves more accountable. They must listen. We asked the directors of our club to attend today. Only Mr Grant and Mr Farrell had the decency to do so. Only they chose to talk to us, rather than ignore us and treat us with contempt. Mr White went as far to say that our campaign would only embarrass the club. Far from embarrassing our club, our purpose is to prevent the likes of Mr White embarrassing our club anymore. If Mr White really wants to talk about embarrassing the club, should he not redirect his comments to Mr Delaney, spycatcher? Over the years, we have stood back and watched our club become a joke due to a succession of decisions that have embarrassed the managers, embarrassed the players, and most importantly, embarrassed the fans. Well, no more. We demand a voice. We feel that an independent supporters association is the only way forward. We have now reached a critical stage in the history of our club, especially in the role that the fans will play. The time has come for a new voice to be heard within Celtic Park, a voice that will truly reflect the opinions of supporters. We would like to think that we could help provide that voice, but it is all very well for us to stand up here today and talk about change. The hard part will actually be achieving that change. Only you can bring that change about. We can do nothing without your support. So if you are sufficiently interested in the formation of an independent supporters association, please put your name and address on the forms provided at the end of each rose. We have many ideas on how the association will develop, but most importantly, we want your ideas and suggestions. For this purpose, we have placed a suggestion box at the rear of the hall. The next stage in our continuing campaign is to try to forge a direct line of communication with the board. Ideally, we would like to have a meeting with them in the very near future. What we would like you to do is inform your friends and fellow supporters of our aims and get them to write to us, including stamped address envelopes. We will then hopefully try to get newsletters out to everybody on a monthly basis telling you what exactly is happening. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing, a club that we can all be proud of, both on and off the park. With that in mind, I'll leave you with the words from Mr Terry Cassidy, our Chief Executive, and I quote, "The amount of feeling people have for this club is almost unbelievable. They desperately want to be a part of it, and there has been a lack of communication." Never a truer word said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Willie Wilson. If you continue to speak like that, you too, that make two of us, will be regarded as a malcontent. I say that because I think it's one word that's very, very much in the repertoire of Mr McGinn. Mr Dempsey, a man who needs no introduction, a man who is well known to you, and possibly one of the reasons why you've come here today in the first place. So without further ado, let me introduce Brian Dempsey.
Thank you very much, Joe. When I listened to that introduction, I had to look around and see who he was talking about. I must say it is nice to be here, but the reality of life is nowadays it's nice to be anywhere. The last time could you run about a bit while you laugh, please? The last time I performed at the Shettleston Halls, I can honestly say that I did have the audience behind me all the way, but I shook them off at the Bailison lights. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom, Jimmy, Jerry, Willie, Jim, Mr Chairman Joe Beltrami, it is a pleasure to be here today. I'm delighted to be able to come to a function such as this, a meeting, and to have the opportunity to talk to Celtic supporters. I must say at the outset, I'm also delighted, particularly delighted, to look around and see some of my fellow executive box holders at Celtic Park, and I would like to thank them for coming too, because, you know, like you and like them and like myself, is that me getting the beep already? I haven't even sworn yet. Like you and ourselves, we are all just one thing in common, and that is well-intentioned, well-meaning, loyal Celtic supporters. I suppose that in reality now, the easiest thing for me to do would be to really ingratiate myself with you and, as I read in one newspaper, toss a barrage of criticism from the sidelines to some of my former fellow directors. It may be the easiest thing to do that, ladies and gentlemen, but I cannot. To do so, I would be guilty of being less than honest with you and certainly dishonest with myself. You can imagine a wee boy growing up in Beltrami, kicking a ball around at 10, thinking he was good enough to beat the world, and certainly could never understand by the age of 14 why Glasgow Celtic had never signed him. And the fact that he played outside right in a boys' guild team, and there was big money in those days, it only cost me 2 shillings a week to play. That they had this little red-headed guy that was keeping me out of the number 7 jersey at Celtic Park. And then suddenly in life to find myself a director of that club. I think that the sense of excitement about it all was dimmed because I had been a paying customer for a long number of years. And on the outside I did recognise, or thought I did, all that needed to be done. But nonetheless, here I was, suddenly a director of what was part of our lives in this part of Scotland. Growing up, it was the common denominator. It was the door opener at weddings, funerals, at meetings of all sorts of description. You just talked about the Celtic and football, and here I was suddenly an administrator of that great club. And in 5 very short months, I found myself working very hard, long hours, doing all sorts of things, trying all sorts of things, coming up with all sorts of ideas, not for myself, but for the club. But you know, the truth of that is that all that you might have seen or believed to be those ideas were not solely mine. I found in my former colleagues some valuable and loyal friends. And it would be so wrong of me today to stand here and glibly pass over that. I found in Jack McGinn a chairman who really only wanted the best for Celtic. When he asked me to come along and join him, I said, "What's the deal?" He said, "All I want you to do is to say and do what you believe to be best for this football club. Not best for Brian Dempsey, or Jack McGinn, or Jim Farrell, or anyone." Because that was his approach. I found in Kevin Kelly, a vice chairman who certainly showed glimpses at times of courage and resilience, that he was prepared to stand fast and be loyal to an argument, if he believed in that argument, and be supportive to it. I found in Jimmy Farrell, an old friend of some years, a man who has a death-defying act of telling you bluntly what he thinks of you, which is rather daring when he's up at places like Stennismuir and Forfar getting a lift home, yet he still does it. An admirable quality, but a man whose knowledge of administrators and people in football, and a man whose courage of his convictions was quite second to none. And I found in Tom Grant, and I'm saying this not because they are here, but because it is true, a man who was very quick to fight the supporters' corner, a man whom I learned very early on had an intense and an immense knowledge of the running of a football stadium, and on a match day you only have to be there after 9 o'clock in the morning to really have an understanding of what goes on, and all the maintenance factors, and all the problems, and all the stewarding, and all the security, and all the police, and particular problems with visiting teams and or players or coaches, and so on, and executive club holders complaining like hell, and executive club members needing this. And he had that knowledge, and very shortly, a great responsibility is to pass on to his shoulders for the design of a new stadium, whatever that might be. But in all of this, the story that Brian Dempsey had, the plan, the way out, really is quite inaccurate. I had an idea that formulated into a plan because of the input and the support and the loyalty and the fortitude of those four gentlemen. And I'm not suggesting I am entitled to any credit, but if I was entitled to that type of credit, then I'm not entitled to it alone. They must also share in that. And that might not be something that you would wish to hear. And there may be things later that they may not wish to hear. But the old adage of life remains consistent. That is that the truth sometimes can hurt. And that is the truth. And what was this great scheme? It was simply this. It was a recognition that the paying customer had to be taken into account. How would supporters travel to football in the future? Within 10 years, the statisticians tell us there will be 30% more car ownership on the roads. So all we have to do is provide 30% more car parking at Celtic Park and we've resolved the problems. How will our supporters travel to football in the days that lie ahead? Who knows? But it seemed to me that this whole ethos of what was Celtic Football Club, that what you and I grew up to believe and recognise, this almost mythological concept of a fabulous tradition, of a recognition of what was your way of life, my way of life, what was all our upbringing, all our beliefs, all our hopes and aspirations rolled into one, into a Saturday afternoon, or, like Jerry, I too remember those Wednesday evenings. It's amazing how the memory sticks by you. But suddenly, here we were all together as one big convoluted empire with no future. As I've grown older after we came through the 70s, Celtic always seemed to me to be a team with a club with a glorious past and an apprehensive present, and who knows about the future. The future always seemed to be regarded as an enemy, whereas those of us in business certainly look to the future as an opportunity. And all of you, whatever you do, whether you be a housewife or a lawyer or a teacher or whatever you might be, we must all look upon tomorrow as our opportunity. Our opportunity to step forward in life, our opportunity to get a new suit, have our hair done, buy this, do that, go here, go there. We must never be apprehensive about tomorrow, because we shape our own destiny. We have it in our hands. Our forefathers proved that over a century ago, and we can do it again if we have to. I saw the need, and these gentlemen supported me, loyally and faithfully, to step out into a custom-built facility, to take the opportunity for a new beginning that recognised not just the problem of a stadium brought upon us by the Taylor Report, the aftermath of Hillsborough, but also as a recognition of our customer, that we have to start catering to his needs. We have to start looking to him, looking to the person who's going to pay all this money, and respond to him, and her, I'm sorry ladies, I use him not in a sexist way. It is nice to see ladies here today. Ladies will play a very important part in the football of tomorrow. The football customer of tomorrow will change considerably, I promise you, and more ladies will come to more and more games, provided football clubs can provide for you the kind of facilities you need, the kind of options that you have, even creche rooms for kids, but certainly good toilet facilities, to say the least. And when you consider, gentlemen, as a business, you now have opened up another half of your population, which so far you have mostly ignored. You can see the opportunities that it brings with it. But this was the opportunity of a new beginning that took the problem of the stadium and addressed it fully. that recognised that our customer was going to change and there would be various levels of that customer and how we were going to respond to him. Tom Grant was an unbelievable help in this because I hadn't a clue about coach facilities, coach park, when the Irish coaches arrived, how they arrived, when other coaches arrived, and what we did, how we responded to them, how visiting teams came, what they would do, what they would not do, what they would need. And we had to try and start looking at catering for that. We had to look to the car-borne customer, how we catered for him, how we parked him, how we got him in and out, how we responded to him, how close he wanted to the facility, what he was looking for as part of that facility within the car park. Within the stadium itself, we had to look to the opportunity of generating a public transport system, a better one. And it was one of those things. It's a fact that Rob Royston provided the opportunity for a railway station, and that was great. It was a great opportunity and one not to be missed. But that brought with it again other problems, how we would create the kind of rail station concourse facility and how we would direct the customer into the stadium. Again, that was very much the man at the end's gambit, and he was very much involved in helping address those problems. Within the stadium itself, we recognised what was needed. We recognised that we had opportunities here of a captive audience of 55,000 for at least 2 hours on a match day, and that opportunity had to exist where we could provide for them the fast food and slow food facilities that are needed, the cafeteria facilities, the opportunity of Celtic shops, and all that could bring, and the opportunity to look at facilities for young children, fathers with young children. I know I've taken my kids along, and after 5 minutes, I'm bored. Little did he know the truth how bored we were. And you say, shut up, watch the game. But the truth of it is, we did recognise those things. We were working down those roads. We also were looking at how we could take this sleeping giant of a brand name, how and what we could do with Celtic Football Club as such. The opportunities it brings, the young lady in the tracksuit top there, the opportunities it brings in the leisure wear industry, the changing of colours, the variety and difference of style. And all those facilities are there, but it's how that we can get out to a wider market, make it a more attractive business, offer a much wider product range to our customer, and how we can get to him. It is the opportunities not just in Scotland, but in Ireland and in England, and in the United States and Canada, and in Australia. I was, this time last year, in Australia. I went to church on a Sunday morning with a lad I grew up with, a neighbour in Belsill, and we went into church in the morning, and this family in front of me came in, man, pa, and the 2 kids, all in Celtic jerseys. I thought it was back in Belsill. The only good thing about it was they could wear the short sleeve ones and get sunburnt. We couldn't do that. But there's a big industry in itself and something that has to be addressed, and something that has to take the Celtic Football Club business forward into the future. There were other aspects of it too that had to be looked at. It was recognised that the youth policy at Celtic is something that needed urgent and immediate attention. That had been started. I don't know where it is now because I'm not privy to things, and these lads wouldn't discuss anything with me. But we had started that road. We had addressed that. Not because I was there. It was something that had emerged, and we were going down the road. We were going forward in that. The boys' club had to be looked at in a different way, and the youth policy had to be geared in a different way, because irrespective of all, and no matter how successful our ambitions would have been in the creation of a new stadium and a new facility, the reality of life is that down the road, countries such as Scotland will never be able to compete with the Europeans spending £8 and £9 million for players. Therefore, the logic of that is to come back to the reality of a good, sound youth policy. So that was another area that had to be taken care of and had to be viewed and had to be looked at. And then again, the whole aspect of football. Here is an ever-changing world, and none more so than in football. We know now they're far advanced in talking of European leagues and a many-league system. We know that there are serious discussions going on about a British league and what that will involve. And we know now and see recently that a league reconstruction proposal now carried out in Scotland will only antagonise major clubs and make them look to different markets. So as that changes, you can't just stay the same. You've got to change your attitude to football as well, and your coaching techniques, and your scouting techniques, and your style, and your emphasis, and the type of players and what you're trying to achieve and do. And that is another area that has to be addressed, and that had begun. No one more than me recognises that the 21st century is round the corner. And I can promise these two directors today, and I know they accept what I'm saying, that if Celtic does not change, and change fast, and become a more dynamic, open organisation, the future does not augur well. But the converse of that is equally true. If once again we can rise to the challenge, respond to the needs that we find ourselves in, as Celtic supporters and as Celtic directors, if we meet that challenge head on, we will never have anything or anyone to fear. The future is our opportunity, but today is our future. Now is our beginning. From the beginning of next season, 10% of the standing capacity is cut in every football club in the country. Within 3 years, it means if you've done nothing to your stadium, you're down 30%, and so it goes on to the end of this decade, and you must be all seated. By 1994, UEFA rulings are that European ties or any ties under UEFA conditions must be all seated. The Taylor report also addresses the fact that within that, high-profile games are also to be all seated. I don't know whose side this mic's on, but it's certainly not mine. I fear we have a spy. Paranoia runs amok. But within the Taylor report, it also addresses, now one of you is working in the second term. This goes on, I'll still be on my knees, and I know that will please one or two people I can think of. We'll change the name of the rally to from Save Our Celts to Save Brian Dempsey, I think. Thank you very much, Willie. A good railway man, always in time when needed. Like British Rail, not too reliable all the same, it's still going down. So UEFA ruling is that high-profile games also will require to be all seated. Now, how will we view, or how will the police view Celtic Rangers games and or British League games? So time is not on our side. And I'm sure the directors recognise that. They recognised it last summer, and I'm sure they recognise it today. The only tragedy is that we've lost another 4 months. I cannot tell you, as human beings, what to do or think, nor would I ever attempt to so do. And I tried when I met that night with the very astonishing and sad news that I would be ousted. I made up my mind then that the critical part of life for me from that moment on was to do nothing or say nothing which would embarrass the club. It has been painful at times, let me tell you, because certain things have been said which were not true. And I deliberately did not take the bait. I have never at any time really said what happened, nor will I. There must be confidences within a boardroom that you must respect as being required. But I will only say this, it was all so unnecessary. I knew what I was saying was not going down well. It's easy to tell at times. And I offered on a couple of occasions to go. I didn't want to come every Thursday night and make life miserable for others. I really didn't want that. You know, you must always temper everything in life, ladies and gentlemen, with the simple fact that you just might be wrong. And at the back of my mind, I was always saying to myself, I just might be wrong. And I didn't want the constant battling. I did offer a couple of times, so much so the chairman spoke to me and said, I don't want you to do that again. The night that it happened, I know Jimmy and Tom were just as shocked as myself, and there was nothing we could do. But one thing. We could do nothing that would be bad or detrimental to the club. You must always remember this great maxim in life. Two wrongs never make a right, no matter what anyone else does. No matter how wrong you might believe they are, no matter how right they might believe they are. In your own eyes, two wrongs never make a right. And later on you'll have yourself to face, and if you've been the catalyst for anything, or the architect of something, then your actions may rise to haunt you. Jimmy Farrell spoke very bluntly to the shareholders that night. And he said something which has haunted me ever since. I hope to be totally wrong. But it taught me from that night on that we have to worry for Celtic, but sooner rather than later, we have to have a dialogue and talk. I started this section by saying I cannot tell you what to do in life, nor would I, and I won't. But I promise you this. There is only one way forward, that is with honour and integrity. There is only one kind of criticism that is good, that is constructive criticism. There's only one kind of energy that is successful, and that is a productive energy, seeking to produce something rather than destroy something else. And I make this appeal to you today. Whatever course of action you choose, whatever route you seek to go forward on, remember who you are. You're Celtic supporters. And by that very being, you are Celtic. Don't let it get you down how others may conduct themselves. Forget it. All that's important in life is how you conduct yourselves. And I make this appeal also to the chairman and directors of Celtic Football Club. For God's sake, stop this childish petulance that if anyone dares to criticise, he is creating mischief. I appeal to them to stop the paranoia. If anyone deigns to ask a question, he's causing embarrassment. We are not. We are in love. A love affair that began early in our formative years and we will take to our death. I said earlier that the common denominator at weddings or funerals, you go to see somebody in hospital, a loved one, a friend, you find yourself talking about football and the Celtic. Take their mind off their agonies. Give them a new set of agonies. We are not, and I certainly am not, and I genuinely believe that you also are not, here to create mischief or cause embarrassment to this great club. That would serve no purpose. No purpose whatsoever. But to suddenly find ourselves able to do something or contribute something or help in a productive way, that would do a lot. And I promise you, sooner rather than later, Jimmy and Tom and the others are going to have to say that these lads have something to offer. I said that Tom Grant was always very quick to fight the supporters' corner, and I have no doubt he would be very quick to say that too. I've heard Jimmy often go on about Celtic and what should be done and where should we go. I've no doubt that he would respond to that too. So I make this appeal to you on this of all days, where we see what's happening in the Middle East in a much more serious situation. All brought about out there because of lack of dialogue, lack of trust, lack of belief, lack of faith, human being to human being. And I make the appeal to you to go that extra mile, to achieve the dignity that is Celtic. Go that extra mile to achieve the rapport that you want and as paying customers you deserve. Go that extra mile to exhort the chairman and directors in the belief, as I'm sure Jimmy and Tom will tell them after today, that you are Celtic supporters, that you do want the best for the club, and that they can prove it by bringing the directors to meet you. Go that extra mile to create a faith and trust that has always been the integrity of the Celtic support and the Celtic administration. You are Celtic supporters. You are faithful through and through. Be so. You are the most loyal supporters in the land. Continue to be so. I've said to you, there is nothing wrong with criticism as long as it's constructive. And there is nothing wrong with any paying customer making his feelings known to the manufacturer of the product he's paying for. Continue so. But do so in such a way that continues the integrity of you as a supporters group and of Celtic Football Club as an institution. You are the best behaved supporters in the land. Make it so. You are the salt of the earth.
The rebels were born. The game had just begun, and a gauntlet was thrown down to the Celtic board. How would they respond? Join us in part 3 of Saving Our Celts.